let me tell you a story about procrastination. This one goes back to 5th grade, when my science teacher made us do energy projects. Build or design a device that harnesses a form of renewable energy. Easy enough. So I chose to make ethanol because it sounded cool, and I was a 5th grader, back in the day. So our teacher gave us a month to do our project, and I felt that was more than enough time for me, of course. While my friends were making their project, I think it was a solar oven that melts butter, I was making ethanol. Yeah, bet they never heard of that. So soon enough, I was procrastinating. And that procrastination was also fueled by my ego that my project was cooler than everyone else's. I put the project off pretty late, until the night before it was due, in fact, where I woke up in a cold sweat remembering I actually had to make something for this thing. So making actual ethanol at this point wasn't an option. So instead, I did some quick thinking, went to the garage, grabbed a beer, and poured it into a jar of mashed corn. Trust me, it seemed legit. But all I remember the next day was a suspicious look on my teacher's face as she took a whiff of my project, maybe thinking it smelled a little bit like Jack Daniels, which it was. I got a B- on the project, not because I got caught for not doing it, but because of all the grammar mistakes on the written portion, which I also typed up the night before. And the solar oven got an A, and I think it melted the butter too. But what matters here isn't about my grades. What matters here is that even with my close call disaster of failing my project, or maybe even failing 5th grade, this is certainly not the last time I have procrastinated. Oh no. And I'm pretty sure many of us can say the same as well. So procrastination has kind of been embedded into the hardwiring of our brains, as some of us do it without even realizing it. But procrastination also reflects a much larger inherent mindset, and it impacts us much further than just schoolwork. We exhibit certain similar patterns in how we approach large complex issues, where we often allow the problem to accumulate and create the solution when it is too late. This reflects an observation I have made of what I call the human crisis response cycle. And throughout history, this tendency has demonstrated how mankind has responded to large and complex issues. So it starts off like this. An issue emerges, but initially poses an insignificant impact on the current conditions. The potential issue is often overlooked or not even seen. So to get you a picture of how this cycle works, I'll be describing the events that occurred in the Cuyahoga River system. So during the Industrial Revolution, industries and municipal services dumped sewage and fuel-based waste into the river. Little attention was given to this problem, even though visible effects were apparent. There are alterations to the color and smell of the water, and oil can be seen on the surface. Next, there is an accumulation effect, where the problem pollution became even more prevalent and noticeable. However, this is where innate behaviors, such as cognitive dissonance, start to come into play. According to Leon Festinger, cognitive dissonance is a tendency for individuals to keep consistency in their minds. If there arises a conflict within their thoughts, individuals will change their mindset or attitude to keep that consistency and eliminate the dissonance. So in the 1800s, in a time of such rapid development, people have much more relevant issues to worry about. The thought of doing something to perhaps solve the issue of pollution conflicts with what is more relevant to them. To do something would slow industries from making money and hamper men and women struggling to feed their families. The conflict in our mind comes from, what's the use of spending effort to solve something that is relatively insignificant to you? We create a mindset where we rationalize, or in more informal words, make excuses to ourselves, where we tell ourselves this small problem will not cause great damage. It creates an ignorance effect, or sense of denial, that allows us to continue to ignore the accumulating effect of the issue. This mindset is often achieved collectively, sometimes making entire populations blind from realizing how much damage has been done. This is simply our minds keeping consistency and eliminating the dissonance. And so therefore, the people and government innately ignored the issue of pollution in the Cuyahoga River and allowed fuel waste accumulation to continue for another 80 years. And in those 80 years, the river was becoming toxic, foul, unusable for recreation. Animal life was becoming devoid. However, every accumulating issue will hit a tipping point where it will not result in a gradual change, but in a sudden change, either as a sudden event or a sudden realization among the people. It is this sudden change that breaks apart our cognitive dissonance. We will only notice the issue when it becomes a crisis. In the Cuyahoga River, the issue of pollution has gotten so bad that a series of fires, and I mean fire on a river, broke out in the 1950s and 1960s and blazed the surrounding land. Massive flames damaged buildings and bridges, and one of the fires totaled up to several $1 million in damage. It was only up until this point the media finally brought to attention how horribly polluted the river has become. Today, it seems almost unbelievable that such a preventable problem managed to escalate into such a horrible crisis. But the solutions and policies to solve this issue were only able to come after the crisis occurred. In fact, it is because of this crisis the EPA was created, spawned from the massive pressure the public put on Congress to protect the environment. Other major environmental legislation, such as the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act, were also initiated because of this crisis. But the question is, at what cost? Driving species extinction, millions of dollars lost in vain, or simply doing irreversible damage to pass something that seems so necessary today? It is this tendency to create solutions only after a crisis that allowed this to happen. The key thing is recognize that we have a tendency to create solutions not to prevent crisis, but to only simply respond to them. We have more at stake right now than ever before, and this cannot be the way how we create solutions to such critical issues. Although the crisis in the Cuyahoga River occurred around 50 years ago, we have crises happening as I speak that are just as bad. These crises are caused by this behavior, and we can clearly see the extent of how much damage these crises can create. However, the technology we have today gives us hope. Even though we see predicament happening all around us, science is improving our ability to be aware and to make sure that these crises are prevented. But even though science can solve the problems created from this behavior, it is ultimately our thinking that has to be changed in order to resolve this. We are all part of this human crisis response cycle, and our minds are hardwired as procrastinators. Even though it can be idealized with a fifth grader simply putting his project off for too long, it is also concerned with how we as humans deal with such issues. This tendency, this cycle of crisis, is innate to us, but at the same time, the cause of some of our greatest mistakes. If we can recognize the tendencies that harm us and be aware of the issues we ignore, you will be astounded at how much better we can protect the world, and we can only imagine how much more we can accomplish. Thank you.